From in the beginning to the musical apocalypse, this is The Bible Says What. I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. Greetings, BSW heathens. I have decided to do a t-shirt giveaway. Once the show reaches 25 patrons, I will pick a patron at random and send them a Bible Says What t-shirt. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will give you a chance to win prizes, gain early access to each episode, and unlock the patron feed. That being said, remember that one time Jesus told his followers it's cool to drink deadly poison? What benefit does Mark chapter 16 verse 17 and 18 carry? If the Bible is the word of Yahweh and useful for a long list of theocratic purposes, how then does this nonsense fit in? How many countless believers have fallen victim to its harmful teachings? This particular verse is responsible for the famous snake-handling pastors. The words read, "They will pick up snakes and drink deadly poison without any ill effects," but they interpret it as, "They will pick up deadly snakes and drink deadly poison without any ill effects." Worst of all, when they do get bit because Yahweh failed to protect them, they believe Yahweh will protect them from the venomous bite. He didn't protect them from the snake, but he'll save them from the venom? As you can guess, the ones that don't receive medical attention die. And of course, when that happens, the believer will assert that the pastor's death was all part of the divine plan. It's insanity. No matter what, Yahweh wins. Let's start the show.
Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I
didn't figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Our returning guest today is Dr. James Spiegel, professor of philosophy and religion at Taylor University. Welcome back to the show, Dr. James Spiegel.
Thanks for having me, sir.
So how are things out there?
Pretty cool for August. The temperatures are in the low 70s. It's overcast and comfortable.
Nice. You staying safe and secluded and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, going through the motions with the mask and so on, even though I think I had that bug, and I think it went through our family in January, but you play along.
Yeah. Do you attend a church out there?
I do, up in Yorktown, which is about 30 minutes north of where we are in Upland, which Upland is basically a big cornfield in central Indiana, about an hour south of Fort Wayne. My church is, did I say north? It's 30 minutes south of us, and it's a PCA church there in Yorktown, Indiana.
Nice. So is it open, or are you guys doing online stuff?
Yeah, we're actually having two services now. Beginning next week, I think. There'll be a early morning service where masks are required, and then a 10:30 or 11 a.m. service where masks are voluntary or, optional.
Interesting. So has the pastor addressed the issue of the COVID? Has he? Because with having the most powerful deity, I find it kind of strange that everybody's hiding from the virus. They should be okay, right? I mean, Yahweh wants to protect them and keep them safe, and if they have faith, they're healed, stuff like that. So has your pastor addressed it at all?
Yeah, given certain assumptions that might seem odd. But he has addressed it, and it's one of these things where you have to achieve a certain balance in terms of abiding by the governmental authorities and exercising freedom of religion, freedom of worship, freedom of assembly. And that's where it's difficult. I mean, it's clearly, other things being equal, looks like a these mask mandates, or not the mask mandate so much as proscriptions against meeting to worship, certainly looks like a violation of the First Amendment in two ways, both in terms of freedom of religion and freedom to assemble. But of course, there are plenty of religious folks, Christians included, who would say, well, the First Amendment has a kind of other things equal assumption built into it. When things get so dangerous or threatening in terms of public health, then some exceptions are
absolutely
appropriate. But that's kind of the debate, and it comes down to a scientific one or epidemiological one. Are we at that point? Have we been at that point? And that's a completely other discussion, but
right.
It does impinge on the constitutional question and certain biblical questions regarding abiding by government authorities.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not safe to gather in masses inside of an enclosed building, it's probably not best to gather in masses inside of an enclosed building. Wouldn't God be happy if you all made worship outside, or if you did it on the television? Does he really matter? Does it care to him? As long as you guys are doing your thing, right?
Yeah, some churches have met outside. Of course, when you do that, you're still together somehow, and some would object to that. But
you can sit in your cars.
The case.
I've seen those.
Whenever you
drive up.
Yeah, I've seen that too. But whenever you gather with other people under any circumstance, it's a risk. Whenever you get in your car, it's a risk. Whenever you eat a hamburger, it's a risk. Risk is everywhere. Germs are everywhere. Bacterial and viral pathogens are everywhere. So the question is, at what point do you reach that magical threshold where you say, okay, now it's time to restrict people's liberty? And that's not written in stone by God or anybody else. We're kind of making this up as we go along.
Yeah. Well, safety first, before Yahweh, I guess. Yahweh's, I don't know. But I think it's just best to stay away, play it safe. I like the idea of parking lot church, that if you guys are going to do church, do it in the parking lot. Stay in your cars. It's safer that way. It's more safer than being in the building together, breathing on each other, coughing on each other, sneezing on each other, all that shenanigans. How long have you been going to that church?
Since 2000. We decided to switch from the mother church that gave birth to this one to start the new millennium. And that's where we've been ever since.
Quite a while to be at a church.
Yeah.
You do anything at the church? Do you
it's a wonderful
sing or
I teach Sunday school from time to time. Yeah, I have performed. I write songs and play guitar and sing from time to time, but mainly teaching Sunday school. And I've served as an elder there. I rolled off after my term expired, but I might do that again. In the PCA, though, you have active and inactive elders. It's kind of situation where you're, in a sense, once an elder, always an elder. So sometimes I'm called upon to contribute in certain ways.
Interesting.
And I do lead what's called a life group, a small group meeting at our house with, just usually it's about a dozen people. So you're welcome to join us for that if you want to make the 1,500-mile trip every Sunday.
Maybe over Zoom.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting. Well, thanks for the invite. I might take you up on that one time.
Yeah. We get into some pretty heady theology sometimes.
Well, that sounds fun.
It's good. Yeah.
Right up my alley, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
So you said you teach Sunday school. Are you still doing that, or is that stopped since the COVID stuff?
I will, from time to time, do like an 8 to 10 week topical Sunday school class. So I've taught one, for example, on practical moral issues. One on theology of technology, which was a lot of fun, dealing with issues ranging from artificial intelligence to biomedical type issues, euthanasia, physician-assisted suicide, even cosmetic surgery, things like that. which are all kind of moral, theological, technological. It's a kind of confluence of multiple disciplines there. And that was a lot of fun.
When I think Sunday school, I think kids. What are the age groups you're teaching here?
Yeah, it's adults.
Gotcha.
And, mostly college educated. But when you get a number of scientists in the room, and we're in Yorktown, which is right next to Muncie, which is where Ball State University is. So we have a number of college professors who attend our church, and a few of them are pretty accomplished physicists. And it's always fun having them in the room when you're, talking about issues like that or apologetics.
I bet you that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Well, last time we discussed kind of how you got into the religion. You had mentioned that your mom was religious, I believe, and your grandmother was a representation of love or something to that effect. Am I correct?
Yeah. Well, both of them were. My grandmother bought me my first Bible, and my mother was always ready with some words of wisdom that somehow would find cracks in my soul to rest in. And, all these decades later, they'll come to mind. And, one of the things that she used to say, maybe she only said it 2 or 3 times that I heard, but it seems like it was resonating in my mind throughout my youth and now into my adulthood. But she would say, Jim, if you cast your bread upon the water, it'll come back to you as sandwich. And it's kind of a little turn or variation of an old phrase that reinforces the idea of, I don't know, in Eastern traditions, you might call it a positive kind of karma. But, the idea that the good you do kind of comes back to you, that one good turn deserves another. And I've just noticed that in my life. If you try to dish out more good and blessing and kindness to other people than you're receiving, and in the end, you receive more than I think you otherwise would. The world tends to reflect back to you what you are.
Interesting. So,
and people who are wicked, who are fools or even damned fools, as they say,
that's me.
They tend to find trouble. If people who are narcissistic and selfish and troublemakers, trouble finds them. There's a song by Morrissey, who's former lead singer of the Smiths, but he's got a song on one of his albums called "Trouble Loves Me," and it's true. I mean, the guy has just been consistently involved in controversy after controversy, but a lot of it's of his own making. He has a lot to say, and in interviews he's kind of brash, and he's very critical of a lot of people. And when you do that and you're openly defiant or belligerent towards different people or institutions, people are going to push back, and you're going to find yourself in trouble. And so it really is a kind of negative version of what my mother would say with the casting your bread upon the water.
You mentioned wicked people. What makes people wicked?
Yeah, I think a general understanding of that would fit with the biblical understanding, and that is people who, more than most, or maybe especially in especially severe ways, demonstrate vice in their life. People who are, say, mean-spirited and cruel to other people, unjust, who lie, cheat, steal consistently when their life is marked by that, then or unfaithful, say sexually unfaithful, and on it goes. Then I think a person then is more or less wicked. But some are more demonstrably so, like an Adolf Hitler, Stalin, or Pol Pot. We got clear examples. But then you get people who are less wicked than that, but still seem to qualify. I think Jeffrey Epstein is a good example of someone who's certainly wicked, with systematic pedophilia, and who knows how many people that he was involved with there. But time will tell, depending on how that Maxwell inquiry and trial goes, if she lives to see the day.
Right.
But that's genuine wickedness there. That I think any reasonable worldview, East or West, religious or not, secular humanist, Judeo-Christian, we can all agree. Hopefully, we can all agree.
Right.
Those are wicked people.
Yeah, I guess because I have empathy. I empathize with the victims. I empathize as a human being. That's where my, disgust of it comes from. And so yours disgust of these actions. Let's just go with Epstein and Pol Pot. These two people, the disgustingness, the things that they did. How does that work in your worldview? Because
I would say the word disgusting is morally irrelevant. I mean, there are things that can be disgusting that don't have any negative moral quality. I mean, I find Brussels sprouts to be positively disgusting.
Peas,
but that is
right
not
there with you.
Rebuke them. Yeah, I'm not rebuking them morally. But what makes someone like a Hitler or Epstein immoral has to do with their behavior and how it violates or contradicts the moral law or standard for a virtuous human life. And so you may or may not find that disgusting. There are some forms of immorality. I wouldn't say I'm disgusted when I hear that, say, somebody stole a lawnmower from a neighbor. I'm not disgusted by that, but I certainly condemn it morally. That's an immoral thing to do because it goes against the absolute moral standard or law.
And that's Yahweh's moral standard and law, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm not really kind of a traditional divine command theorist, but I'd say Aquinas is right in that God is the moral standard, and his commands simply reveal to us what his nature is. So he is the standard, just as he's the ontological ground or metaphysical ground of all being. He is the moral ground of all goodness.
So
that's why
when he does the mass killings, I think last time we talked about the genocide versus mass killings. So when he does mass killings, Yahweh, why is that not considered wicked?
Well, because the people he is killing, they deserve to die. They're extremely wicked. It would be presumably like God wiping out all of those Nazis, think of all the people who were involved. You know how many people were involved in the Nazi Holocaust that took part in the actual killing? What would your estimate be?
Lots.
How many people helped to kill?
I don't know. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Jews and others. Yeah, but would you
too
say
many
in the
following orders?
Hundreds
of thousands, probably. Yeah, I mean,
it was by most estimates at least 100,000, maybe upwards 400,000. So you've got hundreds of thousands of wicked people that it seems reasonable to say they deserve to die.
Now, do their children deserve to die?
Yeah, we did talk about that last time. So
yeah, but do the children of these Nazis deserve to die?
That is a great question. I mean, that's the hard one.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to answer that reasonably, I'd say a biblical thinking person or a Christian or Orthodox Jew would have to say, let's consider whether any human being actually deserves to live.
No, I can tell you a child deserves to live right now. Me and you, we can both agree a child deserves to live its life to the fullest, have the most opportunities it possibly can, and be happy and live a full life. We can both agree on that a child deserves that, and that's what would be best for a child, right?
Yeah, I think given our station in this world as humans, we're in the sacredness of human life. We have a duty to preserve life. Other things being equal, unless you have someone who is, say, a murderer. If you do believe in the death penalty, you'd say, well, that person deserves to die. But given that God is God and he's the creator, is he morally bound or bound in any other way to make sure that any creature that he creates lives a certain number of years on earth before he takes them into the next realm? I don't see how one could generate any kind of divine duty there.
Well, why does he interfere?
So,
He doesn't have to interfere at all. Just let them live.
Well,
He
I don't
interferes in
think
a lot
that,
of these children's lives in the Bible. He steps in. He slaughters their children in Hosea 9:16. He's aborting them. He's starving them because their parents did something he didn't like.
Yeah, so the question is whether God ever really interferes at all, if that's the right word for it. I would say interference suggests that anything, you say, why didn't he just let them live? That suggests that anything could continue to be outside of God's sustaining power. I don't think that's true. It's certainly not biblical. You know, the scriptures say that God sustains all things by his powerful word in Hebrews 1:3, and there are other passages that point in the same direction, divine conservation. So the idea is that nothing continues to exist unless God sustains it in existence. So then does God have a duty to keep doing that in every case indefinitely for every human being? Well, no. I mean, I don't see how you can generate that kind of divine duty.
So I'm only alive because Yahweh's keeping me alive?
That's right. Divine conservation. It's a Orthodox, basically historic Orthodox Christian and Judeo-Christian doctrine.
Interesting. Very interesting. So if Yahweh ceased to keep me alive, I guess I just die. That's very weird. So why does he kill people, though, instead of just stop keeping them alive?
Thinking about you. If he stops thinking about you or me, we disappear.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. Come on, man.
Well, of course it does. If you understand you have one of two choices. This gets us back to a pretty deep metaphysical question. You have one of two options. You believe, evidently, that matter is most real and that all minds are a product of matter, correct? All consciousness is reducible to and arises from matter. The other option, which is the view that I take and any theist takes, is that no, consciousness is most basic and all of the material world derives from consciousness. Those are your two choices. In every worldview, one way or another, boils down to one of those. Now, one is tangible. I find my view. Say that again?
One is tangible. One I can see, feel, touch, hear, smell, taste. The other I can't.
But you are quite aware of your own consciousness, aren't you?
I guess, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's even more fundamental than the things you're seeing in front of you. You can close your eyes.
Well,
and
that comes from my brain, though. My brain is producing these thoughts and whatnot. That's an actual object.
Yeah, according to the materialist worldview, which says everything reduces to matter. But if you study philosophy of mind,
you don't think my brain comes up with this stuff?
Well, the question is, if that is the case, then how does that work? Every theory which has been proposed, they include something called philosophical behaviorism, reductive materialism, or strict identity theory, another called functionalism. They've all reached just devastating dead ends to the point where even leading materialist philosophers like Thomas Nagel have concluded that it just won't work. Thomas Nagel is one of the leading scholars in this area in philosophy of mind of the last 50 years, and he wrote a book about 6 years ago called Mind and Cosmos, and the subtitle is Why the Neo-Darwinist Materialist Conception of the Universe is Almost Certainly False.
Well, you're inserting Yahweh, though. Regardless of what it is, you're inserting Yahweh. Yahweh, you go from that to Yahweh. How do you get from that to Yahweh? How does that make sense?
Yeah, good question. Well, if it is the case that the matter first, all is from matter paradigm fails, and we have to go with the opposite, and that is all comes from mind or consciousness, then it's a question of which consciousness. It isn't coming from my mind. There are all sorts of things I'm experiencing that my mind isn't producing, and the same is true of your mind and every other finite mind. So what is producing all of these phenomena of human experience? It must be some unthinkably powerful mind that is controlling all of this, and that takes you right into the lap of theism. Call it Yahweh, call it Allah.
My invisible dinosaur deity. She's the one that did it. She's the one that gives you your consciousness. She's the one that's keeping you alive. How do you decipher between Yahweh and my invisible dinosaur deity?
Well, it would have to be a being that is so powerful as to be
Super
able to
powerful.
sustain
She's the most
universe.
powerful being that ever was, that ever existed.
Then don't call her that. Call her, the primordial consciousness.
The primordial
but
dinosaur.
Again, you can.
It could be anything. It could be a boot, dude. You don't even know.
When you put terms like
right?
that onto it, when you put terms like dinosaur onto it, you're describing it or terming it with a finite being.
Right, you put Yahweh, my dinosaur deity. She's a deity. That's the difference. You have a deity. You're invisible man. He lives in his golden city on his chair and whatnot. And then I have my dinosaur deity. She's invisible and she lives in the clouds. How do you decipher between the two? How do you distinguish which one is real?
So that's when we have to start talking about specific attributes, and if that deity that you're naming, invisible dinosaur or whatever, if that term is applying to a being that has all of this power, knowledge, understanding, and creativity, then fine, you can call it whatever you want. The question is, do the attributes match up to what is metaphysically necessary to account for all of this?
I can make it fit, just like you can make Yahweh fit into things. It's
great. Then you're a theist too, Michael.
I'm a dinosaur theist. There
Welcome
you go.
to the club.
Yeah.
See you in my Sunday school class on Sunday.
I can insert
wear your mask.
anything into this position, without him coming down and verifying anything, without him showing up and say, hey, guess what? I'm here. I exist. I can literally put anything in there. A boot, my dinosaur deity. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but just in terms of logic, reason, and coming up with explanatory hypotheses, you're not permitted to do that. Again, whatever your concept is, it needs to account for the data, right? I mean, look at the explanatory power that is required of this being, and that is what is going to dictate the attributes it has. Again, you can put any name on it you want, but it's going to have to be all powerful. It's going to have to be all knowing, and super wise. And once you affirm those things, then you're really close to classical theism.
What makes you think that that it requires a wise being? Do you think a wise being created this world?
I do. Yeah.
Wise, loving being.
Yeah.
Everything wants to kill you. Everything. You're not safe from anything. How is this a wise thing? I've got my breathing tube right next to my feeding tube. That doesn't seem very smart. Or in my, it's the same thing.
It's been pretty effective. Sure, we cough from time to time.
I can choke and die very easily. That's not very smart. Why not make a separate hole that I breathe out of, not the same one I eat out of?
Come up with a better system.
I'm sure somebody could. This is not a perfect system. My system is not perfect. The world is not perfect. The earth is not perfect. I don't understand how you get that.
Yeah, well, there is a biblical doctrine of sin and fallenness where we know that even the physical world has been damaged by sin and human rebellion. So, we can't blame God for our sin. And that's why
he did it.
He made the world in which human beings would fall, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, he created this world.
That is a good question.
Yeah, he created this world for the specific reason, this specific way. He knew this was going to happen. This is his plan. Do you believe he has a plan?
Yes, he did. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
And that's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what God was thinking there. Why did he permit the fall? And that's where the greater good theodicy, we talked about this last time, is so helpful, where if there are greater goods that can be achieved in terms of beauty and virtue and so on, in the ultimate blooming of this world into the next world, then it will have been worth it, just as it is worth it for you to go to the dentist, get a Novocaine shot.
That's
that hurts,
completely
but
different, man. See, you go to dentist, I go to kids with cancer. Why did Yahweh not make kids immune to cancer? That'd be a great idea. Why not? Why make children have to suffer? What are they going to... Like, oh, yeah, suffer before you get to heaven so you'll enjoy heaven better?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a straw man there. When we're talking about character development to a degree perhaps that we can't even conceive, we might say that even the most difficult things that people have gone through are worth it in the end.
No.
So there's that. And then that's not the only theodicy. There's also the free will theodicy and the natural law theodicy, which talks about natural consequences of human behavior, including rebellion. All of those have some explanatory power, I believe.
Do you think Yahweh loves us?
I don't want to deny that these are good questions. I mean, these are questions I struggle with. You're not asking any questions I don't wrestle with myself.
As you should. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. Do you think Yahweh loves us and wants what's best for us?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Let's look at love. What does the Bible say about love? 1 Corinthians 13, 4-3. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. That's interesting. Not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Interesting. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Always. Those words always there are kind of like nails in the coffin for this. Let's start with the beginning. Love is patient. Love is kind. Does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Yahweh is very boastful about himself. He's very self-seeking. It says it's not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's all about Yahweh. He's very self-seeking. So does that mean Yahweh's not love, or does this love description not describe Yahweh and he gets a pass?
Well, two things there. One, the fact that God would even sacrifice himself for the sake of humanity.
For 3 days. He's back in heaven. Not much of a sacrifice. And he's a God. I mean, come on. Not much of a sacrifice there. Ezekiel sacrificed more.
It's pretty tough to belittle that kind of extreme self-sacrifice, but he
spent a day suffering and 3 days in a grave, and now he's living up eternity in heaven. That's a good thing, isn't it? Not that bad. What about children who suffer daily for years with cancer? They suffer for years, and then they die. I think that's a little more, and they don't get to sit at the right hand of Yahweh. They're not a magical being,
Well, you don't know that. You don't know what their next world condition is. You're presuming more than you know there. And it just might be the case that they get exalted to a point that is so far above the rest of us that they will be saying, wow, that was definitely worth it.
So if you suffer more, Yahweh gives you better things in heaven?
Yeah, I think you have a theme there with certainly in the apocalyptic literature, there is a kind of underscoring of the rewards of those who were martyred, who suffered for righteousness. Yes, they get greater rewards, just as there are degrees of punishment as well, as some of the New Testament passages point to. But here's the other thing I was going to say was there's a little essay, actually it's a short book written by Jonathan Edwards called The End for Which God Created the World. It's one of the most profound things I've ever read. And in it, he deals with the question, how does God regard himself?
Very highly.
And it's profound, yeah. But here's his argument. He says, let's begin with just the basic premise here, that God is the most holy and wonderful and beautiful and great being in all of reality, infinitely great. If we begin with that, which is basic biblical idea.
No,
then
you can't begin with that. You have to look at his character. You have to read what he does, and how he reacts to things. And once you realize what his character is, you can't just start with he's wonderful and beautiful. You have to start with what his actual words are, what his actual actions are.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, for the sake of this argument, let's just finish this argument, and I'll address that in a minute. But if we believe, as all Christians do, all pretty much all classical theists would say God is an infinitely great being, then that would imply that he is also most just. And justice has to do with giving to each its due and regarding each according to its greatness. So God is in this unique position as he regards himself of being, in a sense, logically bound to give himself the all glory, everything that he does as a matter of even moral duty must be to magnify the greatness and beauty of God. So he's in that kind of, you might say, awkward position that might look like self-serving from the standpoint of finite fallen mortals, but you're talking about an infinitely great and holy God. So to say, well, he's being selfish or self-seeking, since we usually hear those descriptors applied to finite people, we associate that with vice. God is the one being in all of reality, regarding whom those things are virtues.
The first premise does not work for me. When the first premise doesn't work, the rest of the argument falls apart. The first premise is your assumption that Yahweh is great. You have to prove that Yahweh is great first. There's no proof that Yahweh is great in this Bible. He kills kids. Nobody that kills kids is great.
So let me ask you this. What moral standard are you using?
Emotions, not emotions, empathy. Using empathy.
So
would I like to be in that
your
situation? No, of course I'd not like to be in that situation. Do I want to watch somebody else suffer? No, of course I don't want to watch somebody else suffer. That's where I'm standing from. Grounds of empathy.
So it's your own feelings.
Right. What else do I have to go off of? A book where God kills a bunch of kids?
A book which testifies to its own validity and authority. And,
right. It testifies to its own validity. I'm real because I say I'm real. That doesn't work. That's not how the world works. Well, Spider-Man is real because I say Spider-Man is real. And he's in a comic book. And on television.
Have to talk about a number of evidences for the divine inspiration of Scripture.
Way more evidence for Spider-Man than there is for Yahweh. Way more.
All right.
Right?
Well, read Nagel's book and read Anthony Flew. You know, he was an atheist for 50 years. You're familiar with him. He was one of Britain's greatest and most well-known and respected scholars for 50 years and a very devout atheist. And in 2005, he finally came out, made national news that he was now a theist. Why? Why did that happen? I mean, super sharp scholar. He said basically because of advances that had been made with regard to the fine-tuning argument for the existence of God. I don't know how familiar you are with that.
Come on, man.
But
fine-tuning. Again, everything wants to kill me. If there's one little thing off, I'm done for. If I just step outside into the water,
that's not the point of the argument. But look into it. It's a different kind of concern. But you've got the fine-tuning argument, the problem of explaining the emergence of life from inert matter.
Doesn't mean Yahweh. That's my dinosaur.
There is no
Come on,
natural
man.
explanation possible.
I'm going to start
that
with.
Has just been ruled out.
I'm going to start with my dinosaur deity is great, and she's the only explanation logically that fits with creation.
So you are admitting some sort of creator?
I can do it just like everybody else does it. Why can't I insert my invisible being?
So you admit that there has to be some sort of rational agent that's super powerful.
No, I don't.
That brought life
it could be a million
existence.
different things, man. We have no idea. Just because I don't know doesn't mean I'm going to insert a magical being into the equation.
Well, that's a straw man, but anyway, that you have that and a number of other things that convinced Anthony Flew, and I think it'd be pretty arrogant to just dismiss him.
I dismiss him.
Out of hand without considering why. After 50 years, half a century of devoting himself.
That's a long time.
To and he changed and became I don't know if it was a quasi-theist or a sort of deist, but he did recognize the need for a creator to explain these things. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if there was, I'll go with that. There has to be a creator. Does not mean it's Yahweh. Does not, how do you get from creation of everything to it has to be Yahweh? There's so many different explanations to how the world began, so many different religions, so many different books and stories about it. This one particular one is yours now. You've collected it and holding on to it, it's yours. But you can't really prove it. You just have this faith. I'm assuming you use faith, right?
Yeah, just like you do.
No. Totally different. 100% different.
You have plenty of faith. You have plenty of faith, Michael. You want to hear some of your faith commitments?
Tell me my faith.
Okay. One of them is that every effect has a cause. Do you believe that?
Every
you can't prove it.
Has a cause. I don't know.
Nature is uniform, that the laws of nature will continue to hold in the future as they have in the past.
That's
you believe
not faith.
That? Right. Of course it is. You can't.
No. Those are cause and effect. I see the effect of it. Yahweh, there's nothing.
The fact that you believe that it will hold in the future regards an event that is yet to take place. It's clearly faith. Every philosopher would agree on that point.
I'm not a philosopher.
Your belief.
Clearly.
How about this one? Your belief that other people have their own thoughts and feelings, that other minds exist.
I've seen it. I've seen the evidence for it. I no longer need faith. When I see the evidence for things, I don't need the faith. The faith is gone.
Tell me what you see.
The emotions in other people?
You call them emotions.
Right.
What you hear right now.
Thoughts
you're
and
hearing
feelings.
Sounds
I know they have thoughts and feelings.
Phone.
They tell me about their thoughts and feelings. I know they're real because they're standing in front of me.
For all you know, for all you can demonstrate, they are automatons that have been programmed to respond to you in certain ways.
Oh, the Truman Show.
You cannot prove.
I'm in the Truman Show. They're all actors.
You cannot prove that other people have minds. This is one of the howlers in the history of
course, I
philosophy.
can't prove that other people have minds unless I open up and look in their mind. And when you can do that with brain surgery, with X-rays and stuff like that, you can see their mind.
All you see is matter.
Neurons. You can see neurons firing. You can actually see the brain in action.
That's right.
Man. I don't need faith.
And you see that in a dead body too. I don't need faith. Thoughts that are visible. Yeah, you do. You assume
not with evidence. If I have evidence,
I
can see it. There's no faith needed.
You can't see a belief.
No,
you can't see a belief. Right?
I don't
need
see
a mental state.
I don't need to see a belief, man. Where's the faith come in that? I don't have a belief. You may have a belief and you use faith for it. I don't have that belief. I don't use faith. I use evidence.
Yeah, you're missing my point. This is a widely accepted point in contemporary philosophy.
Well, maybe I'm missing something.
The failure in the whole history of philosophy to prove that there are other private thoughts and feelings. All that we ever experience, no matter how close we look at a brain, is neurons, axons, dendrites, all sorts of biochemical events.
And I no longer need faith then.
But you don't know. What you see is the biochemistry and the physiology. We're talking about beliefs and emotions, which are by their nature.
I have emotions. People also have the same brains and the same bodies. They also have emotions. It doesn't take a giant leap of faith to go to that.
Well, it does take a belief in something you cannot prove, which is by definition faith.
I just did prove it. I watched them happen and watch it happen. Physically,
Michael,
watching it happen
proved it,
is proof.
I guarantee you, I'd make you famous. You would make it if you just could prove that. You would become famous in the history of philosophy. I promise you. So you just write down that proof.
We'll get it published.
Your name and mine, and we will go down in history. It's true. But that's another article of faith. There are all sorts of articles of faith. The fact that you believe in the laws of nature, that every effect must have a cause.
Again, yes, I see these things, though. That's the physical evidence. I actually see these things happening. The effect, the cause, I witness it. Mm-hmm.
How about this one? This Descartes pointed out, you can't prove that you're awake now and not dreaming. Your present state of consciousness.
I guess so, yeah. Okay, there you go. It's got to be Yahweh.
You might wake up in just a few moments and realize, whoa, I was dreaming I was talking to Spiegel. And now it's 1:45. I got to give him a call. We've all had those dreams where, man, that was real. You wake up in a cold sweat.
Oh, man.
I thought that was real. How do you know you're not in one of those right now? It's a matter of faith.
No.
So there are 5.
It's a matter of
articles
reality.
faith
What's around you. You eventually you're going to wake up.
that are-
You're going to see the realness of it. You're going to realize the fakeness of it. I don't know. It's evidence. Evidence to me is I don't need faith at that point. But I did want to get back to the 1 Corinthians 13, where it says that love is not self-seeking. Now, how do you? Well, there's also delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. Always protects, always trusts. That's the problem. I also have the always protects, always preserves. But right now, let's go to the self-seeking, not self-seeking. Clearly, Yahweh is self-seeking. So how do you work that into being loving? He's so concerned about himself.
Well, I would appeal to Edward's argument, which I think is powerful, and in the end for which God created the world, that if he isn't self-seeking, then he would be imperfect as God. He needs to seek his own good.
Why?
But he is also other-seeking. He seeks the good of others.
That's mute. That point is mute. Once he's self-seeking, he stops being the loving whatever that this verse describes. This verse is describing what love is. He is not that thing. He's not.
I think we'd have to go back
kind
to
first,
the Greek,
first off.
and I don't know the Greek in that passage, but it might have the connotation or denotation of being exclusively self-seeking. I mean, you can be self-seeking while also
you got to add to it at that point. There's not proud. What about that one? He's very proud of himself. Give me all the attention. Look at me, me. I did this, I did that. The whole Old Testament. Look what I did. I brought you out of Egypt. Dude made this giant theatrical show for no reason, killing a bunch of kids, and then he wants to be worshipped and praised for it throughout the whole Old Testament. The whole Old Testament. And look at me. Look what I did for you. Come on, guys. I mean, that's pride right there. He's so proud of boastful. He's very boastful.
Vicious pride, if we look at that particular vice, it's vicious pride as opposed to
vicious pride. It just says
pride.
Not proud, period.
Well, there are 2 kinds of pride. One is opposite humility. That's bad. The other is opposite shame, and that's good. So you don't have any kids, right? Or do you? You got kids?
I do.
Are you proud of your kids, Michael?
Sometimes I am proud of the things they do, and sometimes I wonder why they did the things they did.
And I think it would be appropriate to be proud in the sense of not being ashamed of the fact that you have a successful podcast. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's vicious pride, which is a kind of arrogance that is a trumped up and overly inflated view of oneself and one's accomplishments.
Like Yahweh.
That's what Paul is condemning there.
You don't think he does that?
You're reading, but not at all. Not when you're the God, the infinite, great God of the universe, who's perfect in every way. Wow. Then he better be giving himself glory, or he's less God.
Well, but that doesn't make sense. He's all about this glory. He needs this glory. Give God the glory alone. Only to me. And if you don't me, I'm gonna throw you in hell. He's
Is that even for his own good, or is that for our good? The way I read it is, since we're made in God's image and we're made to glorify him, if we're not doing that, then we will be less happy, less joyful, and less fulfilled. So it's for our good that he commands us to worship him.
No, I don't need to. I'm happy without him.
Well, that's your view.
Actually, I'm way more happy now that I've left religion. Now that I don't have that fear hanging over me of this invisible parent figure who's going to punish me for eternity if I don't love him back. If I do one little thing to screw up.
Sounds like you weren't worshiping a God that you conceived as gracious and forgiving.
Where's the gracious and Oh, that was another part right there. Keeps no record of wrongs. Keeps no record of wrong.
Yeah.
Yahweh has a book of life where he's going to tell you all the bad things you did.
It also says that he will remove our sins from us as far as the east is from the west.
Right, but it also says love keeps no record of wrong. So therefore, how is Yahweh still loving when he keeps record of wrong, when he's self-seeking, when he doesn't always protect or preserve?
Well, it in many ways depends on our response. If you're someone who refuses to forgive others, then you won't be forgiven. It's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where what you dish out, you tend to get back. And if you're forgiving towards other people, that's just the sort of faith disposition that will receive forgiveness in return. So I don't think you have to read that passage as suggesting that for every single person that God made, he, keeps no record of their wrongs. I hope he keeps a record of all of Satan's wrongs and all of the wrongs of those who were, the perpetrators of the Holocaust, because they were unrepentant and they refused to show mercy to others.
Does he not have the best memory? Why does he need a book to put it all in?
It's a metaphor. You're being, it's an anthropomorphic expression. You can't be literal with that.
I can't be literal
stop
with a
taking the Bible.
book.
Stop taking the Bible literally, Michael. Stop it. Now you're going to tell me that being born again, you have to climb back into your mother's womb. That's disgusting.
Oh man, do you have two belly buttons if you're born again? How's that work?
It was Nicodemus that came to Jesus and, started asking these questions, and Jesus says, you must be born again. And he's like, wait a minute. How can a man get back inside his mother? It's like, wow, Pharisee, man. That's a pretty flat-footed literalism there. I'm speaking metaphorically, buddy. Jesus spoke probably mainly in figurative language. I mean, he's just full of metaphors and figures of speech. And I think we get in trouble when we impose literal readings on a lot of what he says, and Paul as well. Well, throughout Scripture, Genesis, there's a lot that's figurative there, but and yet there's a lot that's historical too. You just have to use careful hermeneutics to discern what is literal and what's figurative.
Separate the exaggeration from actual historical evidence or historical documentation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so there's a lot of in-house debates over that. I mean, think about, you're familiar with the origins debates, and so you have some Christians and other Muslims and Jews who would be theistic evolutionists, others who would be more special creationists, and different hybrid views there. And a lot of it turns on how you interpret Genesis 1 and 2.
Right. There's a lot of different ways to interpret this book. A lot of different ways to, take the words that are written in it. How do you know which one's the right way?
Takes work, just like in science and history and philosophy. There is no discipline that doesn't require a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So we should expect that in theology, especially since God says through the prophet Isaiah, surely you are a God who hides himself. Remember that? He says, you are a God who hides himself, which might seem odd or peculiar or even problematic for philosophers who complain about divine hiddenness. But if you understand God as a cosmic artist, and what do artists do? They never spell everything out for you. They create a beautiful artwork, and then there are certain things, a lot of thematic elements that you have to work for to interpret, a lot of things you have to dig for that are kind of below the surface or take a lot of interpretive inquiry and investigation to find out what the real meaning is. And I think the cosmos is like that. Human history is like that. And probably our individual lives.
Well, that's very confusing.
You would expect that. Yeah, it is. But that's the nature of art. Art is off-putting, frightening sometimes, confusing.
Well, 1 Corinthians 14:33, Yahweh is not the author of confusion. Is that what that verse means, or is that talking about something else? Because if that's what that means, the Bible's pretty confusing. There's all kinds of different interpretations and translations and hermeneutics.
What chapter is that?
What was it? 1 Corinthians 14:33.
Yeah, isn't the context there the church? It may be orderly worship.
Right. Regardless, it says that Yahweh's not the author of confusion. Regardless of the context of the story beforehand, no matter who he's talking to, if he's talking to Satan, he still says that Yahweh is not the author of confusion, which would make me believe that this stuff is pretty easy to figure out.
Well, when it comes to orderly worship, right, there should be no confusion. He's not the author of that kind of confusion. And I wouldn't say that the artwork he's made, the world that it is chaotic and confused.
The world is
in
chaos.
Itself, but it is confusing to finite minds who are fallen.
That's not what that says.
Mysterious.
I don't
make a distinction between what's between confusion and mystery. There's a lot that's mysterious.
Right.
So you wouldn't blame Salvador Dali or Picasso. You wouldn't say, "Oh, that artwork is totally confused. Look at it."
It's meant to be though. It's meant to look like that. That's a specific art form. Yahweh is trying to give us the tools for life, the story of the beginning of the world. Why make it confusing? Especially if the end result is either you get to go to heaven or burn forever in hell. Why would you make it that confusing? Why can't you just... We would have one religion if it wasn't confusing.
Well, thankfully, the Bible is more than just the first couple chapters of Genesis.
I don't know.
He has written 66 plus other books that are in,
that are just as confusing.
Holy Writ. There is a lot that is confusing, yeah. But it is, it's what is it? It's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's the glory of kings to search it out.
Riddles. He's like the riddle.
So,
why do you speak in riddles? Just talk to us.
Yeah, that was, you're quoting the disciples now. So, of course,
that makes
Jesus
a lot of sense, doesn't it?
And God is in the flesh, and he speaks in riddles.
Why?
So I can't deny it. I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's confusing. If you speak in riddles, it's not plain English, or not plain English, obviously not plain English, but it's not plain for everybody to understand. Yahweh wants everybody to be saved. He wants everybody to have this relationship with him, but the words are confusing. They're all in riddles, and he hides himself.
Have you ever tried to work a Rubik's Cube, Michael?
I've
confusing,
attempted,
isn't it?
Yes. Uh-huh.
But you don't condemn it and say,
right, but
darn the creators of this
no,
thing.
but the box
doesn't
also say that this is very easy and not confusing. You should be able to understand this. That's not what the box says. The box says, hey, good luck.
I don't think that there's any kind of statement written on the cosmos that says that either.
There's in the Bible.
The Bible.
It's in the Bible. Yahweh is not the author of confusion. This is very confusing stuff.
Well, again, the context of that passage is Christian worship, and that's a different deal.
And again, it says Yahweh is not the author of confusion, meaning he does not author anything that is confusing. Very, I don't know, plain English for me. Well, we're out of time.
Wow, that flew by.
It sure did, man. I'd love to do a part 3 because I really want to dive into that love a little more, but I do have to go right now.
Who doesn't want to dive into love, brother?
Good point. Oh, man. I appreciate your time today and your answers and coming back, man, and I'll keep in contact. We'll do a part 3 for sure.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.
All right, see you, Michael.
Bye. And that's all the podcast there is for you today. Thanks for listening. The show has a new Love Me 3 Times patron, Jim Daw. Thank you, Jim, for the support and extra love. You too can be immortalized in BSW history by stopping by the patron page at patreon.com/BSWthepodcast and signing up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will help me upgrade some equipment, spend more time working on material, and boost my reach. Thanks to the cosmic powers of the internet, it is now possible to buy me a beer or coffee online. Simply go to buymeacoffee.com/BSWthepodcast and click the appropriate buttons. If you can't support the show monetarily, please like, share, and or leave a review. As always, you can find me at the Bible Says What Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram pages. You can also reach me at bswthepodcast@gmail.com. And no matter which platforms you use to listen to your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly pick up your Bibles and read them?